Everyone says if your children don't visit, you should just let them go. Give them space. Stop calling. Wait for them to come to you. And I'll tell you what, I tried that. For 3 years I tried that. And all it got me was a kitchen table for one and a silence in my house so loud I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway from every single room. So today I'm going to tell you about the cruel trick I played, the one that brought my son back. But I need you to understand something first. It wasn't cruel to him, it was cruel to me. And I had to be willing to break my own heart before his could ever start to heal. My name is Eleanor. I'm 83 now. And this is a story I never thought I'd tell out loud. I want you to picture a kitchen. Not a fancy one. The kind with yellow linoleum floors that are always a little cold in the morning, and a refrigerator that hums a certain song you don't notice until it stops. That was my kitchen in the summer of 1968. I was a young bride then, standing at the counter with flour up to my elbows, making a birthday cake for my husband, Tommy. God rest his soul. The radio was on. I think it was WJR out of Detroit. And I had this little radio on the windowsill, and the smell of butter and sugar was filling up the whole house. That was the summer I learned how to bake a proper yellow cake with chocolate frosting. The same cake I made for every birthday for the next 50 years. I can still feel the weight of that mixing bowl in my hands. Heavy, warm. That was the beginning of everything for me. Being a wife, being a mother later. I had 2 children, a daughter, Sarah, who lives out in Oregon now, and my son, Michael. Michael was born in the winter of 72. A blizzard came through the night he was born. Tommy said the roads were so bad he had to park the car 3 blocks away and walk through snow up to his knees just to get to the hospital. And when he finally got there, he said the nurse handed him this little bundle with a shock of dark hair, and Michael looked right at him, like he already knew him, like he'd been waiting. I tell you that because I want you to understand. That boy was my whole heart, from the moment he came into this world. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I was a perfect mother. I was a mother of the 70s and 80s. I packed his lunches, I drove him to Little League, I sewed name tags into his camp clothes. I did what mothers did. But somewhere in there, I also did something I didn't realize I was doing. I made him responsible for my happiness. It's a hard thing to admit, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of us did that. We poured so much into our children. We built our whole world around them. And then when they grew up and walked out the front door, we expected them to keep holding up the walls from a distance. After Tommy passed, it must have been 10 years ago now, that's when it got really quiet. Sarah had already moved west. Michael was here in the same state, about an hour away. And at first, he was wonderful. He'd come by every Sunday after church. He'd bring me groceries. He'd sit in Tommy's old chair and tell me about his job, about his life. And I lived for those Sundays. I really did. But then something shifted. I don't know if it was me or him or just the weight of time. He started coming every other Sunday, then once a month. The phone calls got shorter. I'd call him and he'd say, "Mom, I'm really busy right now." And I'd hear that little sigh. You know the one that means you're a task on a list. And I'd tell myself, he's a grown man. He has his own life. You have to let him live it. I'd read all the articles, the ones that say, let them come to you. Don't be a burden. Find your own hobbies. So I did. I joined a book club at the library. I started going to the senior center on Tuesdays for bingo. I tried so hard to build a life that didn't revolve around waiting for him. But here's what no one tells you about letting them come to you. Sometimes they don't come, and you're left sitting in that silence, pretending it doesn't feel like a punishment. The worst day was a Sunday in October. The leaves were just turning. I had made that yellow cake, the same one from 1968. I had it sitting on the counter under a glass dome. I had cleaned the house. I had even put fresh flowers in a little vase on the table. I was so sure he was coming. He'd said he might. He said, "I'll try, Mom." I waited all day. I watched the light change through the window. I watched the shadows get long. I sat in my chair with a cup of coffee that went cold, and I waited. At 5 o'clock, I called him. He didn't answer. I left a message, a cheerful message. "Hi, honey, just checking in. Hope your day was nice. Love you." And then I sat there and looked at that cake under the glass dome. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad. I felt something else. Something I didn't have a name for then. But now I know what it was. It was the moment I realized I had been trying to hold on to something that was already gone. And the tighter I held, the more I was pushing it away. So that's when I did the cruel trick. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. But I need you to understand why it worked. What I did was simple. I stopped calling. But not the way the articles tell you to stop calling. Not with the secret hope that they'll notice the silence and come running. No, I stopped calling because I finally accepted that he wasn't going to come. I stopped calling because I decided in my heart that I had done my part. I had loved him. I had raised him. I had been there. And if that wasn't enough to make him want to be in my life, then no amount of phone calls was going to fix it. So I stopped. I put the phone down, and I started living my life like I was the only one in it. That sounds sad, I know, but it wasn't. It was freeing in a terrible, lonely way. I stopped making the cake. I stopped cleaning the spare room. I stopped buying the brand of orange juice he liked. I started going to church on Sundays instead of waiting for the phone to ring. I started going for walks in the afternoon, long walks, the kind where you just wander and see where your feet take you. And I let the silence in my house become my silence, not a waiting silence, just a silence. Now here's where the cruel part comes in, and I'm using that word because it's what people might call it, but I don't see it that way anymore. 3 months went by, 3 months without a call from me. And then one evening I got a call from Michael. And when I answered, his voice was different. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't sighing. He said, "Mom, you okay? I haven't heard from you." And I said, "I'm fine, honey. I've just been busy." He didn't know what to say to that, because I had never been busy. I had always been waiting. And in that moment, for the first time in our adult relationship, the roles shifted. I wasn't the one reaching. He was. He came to visit the next weekend, and he sat at my kitchen table, and he looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time in years. He said, "Mom, you seem different." And I said, "I am different." We had a long conversation that day, not about the silence, not about the missed Sundays. We talked about the old neighborhood, about his father, about his own worries. And somewhere in there, he said something that I think was the truth he'd been carrying. He said, "I think I stayed away because every time I came, you looked so relieved to see me. And it felt like too much. It felt like I was the only thing holding you up, and I couldn't be that for you." And I realized then what I had done. I had made my love feel like a weight. I had made my need feel like a demand. And he, my sweet boy, had pulled away not because he didn't love me, but because he didn't know how to carry me and himself at the same time. The cruel trick wasn't cruel at all. It was me finally putting down the weight I had been asking him to carry. It was me saying, without words, "I love you enough to let you go, and I love myself enough to keep living." And when I did that, when I really did it, he came back. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. Because I had become someone he could visit without feeling like he was walking into a debt he couldn't repay. Now, I'm not telling you this to say that if you stop calling, your children will come running. That's not how love works. Some children don't come back, and I know that's a pain that nothing in this world can fix. I'm not going to sit here and tell you some easy answer for that kind of heartbreak. What I'm telling you is that I learned something. I learned that the love we give our children when they're little, it's supposed to be a gift, not a loan, not something they have to pay back with visits and phone calls and guilt. I think about that cake, the yellow cake I used to make. I haven't made it in a long time. But last month, Michael came over for my birthday. He walked in with a box, and inside was a yellow cake from the bakery down the street. He said, "I remembered." And we sat at that same kitchen table, him in his father's old chair, me in mine, and we ate that cake. And it wasn't the same as the one I used to make, but maybe that's the point. It wasn't supposed to be. So if you're sitting in a quiet house right now, waiting for a phone that doesn't ring, I want you to hear me, not as a woman who has the answers, just as a woman who has been where you are. You did your job. You loved them. You raised them. You gave them everything you had. And that love, it's still there. It's not wasted. It's not forgotten. It's just finished, in the way that raising children is a job that ends. And what comes after, that's not your job anymore. That's a relationship. And a relationship takes two people choosing each other. Maybe they'll choose you, maybe they won't. But either way, you have to choose yourself. You have to put down the cake. You have to let the silence be yours. Not a waiting silence, just a silence. And in that silence, if you listen close enough, you might just hear who you are. Not who you were as a mother, but who you are right now, in this moment. I'm Eleanor. I'm 83 years old, and I still have a lot of living left to do, with or without the cake. Thank you for listening. I hope you find your way back to yourself. And I hope when you do, you find there's room enough for everyone who truly wants to be there.